My name is Assessment-Lege. This is for my interpersonal communication scores 1318. I just want to let you know beforehand that these first couple definitions that I have, they are all from the book. I will be citing the page numbers. I did not write any of these myself. All I did was completely copy and put them on here. I will be giving the page numbers, and I will say what chapter they are from. All of these definitions are from chapter 10, because that's what we were studying in the chapter 10 assessment. And I will let you know whenever I have my own spin on the definition. Okay. Individualistic culture. All of this can be found in It's Interpersonal. This is our textbook, and this is chapter 10. Individualistic culture, this is on page 265, is a cultural orientation characterized by a heavy emphasis on individual success and self-determination. This is 265, collectivism culture, a cultural orientation characterized by a heavy emphasis on independence and teamwork. 265, low context culture, a cultural orientation characterized by communication that is formal, direct, and focused on getting things done. 265, high context culture, a cultural orientation characterized by the value placed on indirect and informal communication as well as in-group harmony. 266, low power distance culture, a cultural orientation that values equality and allows for greater socioeconomic mobility. 266, high power distance culture, a cultural orientation characterized by rigid social hierarchy and indifference to power and authority. 266, masculine culture, a cultural orientation characterized by distinct roles and a generally high social status for men. Feminism out, a cultural orientation characterized by less distinct gender, that was on 266, is characterized by less distinct gender roles and a relatively egalitarian status for men. 267, polychronic culture, a cultural orientation characterized by a flexible approach to time. Monochronic culture, a cultural orientation characterized by strict schedule approach to time. By the way, that was on 267. This is the part in Area 1 where I go into all the things that I am. Since I live in America and I'm used to the cultural norms we have, I am an individualistic person. I am, with almost all of my college work, I do everything by myself. Whenever I'm doing a speech, I usually ask someone, I'm like, hey, can you read the speech, or can I talk to you and you tell me what I did wrong? So that's whenever I ask for help, or I'm like, hey, I wrote this paper, can you come help me out? I just need to make sure it sounds right. So those are the only times that I'm not an individualistic person, because I like to hear other people's point of view, and I want to make sure that I don't ramble or sound weird. Because of my family and school, my culture is low context. I like getting things done. I like being to the point. And of course, like the definition said, you can be nice about it. You have an idea or you have a thought and you want to get it done. You have a job to do, then you want, of course, to be done with it. And usually, and as I said, I like having the job done. So I'm a low context type of person, and so is my family. So I live in a middle class family, and we are in a low power distance. It would be a dream come true, of course, for anyone to suddenly get rich. You know, great uncle dies, gives you money. Thank God we're rich now. But the way that I have raised and the way that our world is, I have been taught that if you pick a good career and you pick a good job and you stick with it and you keep going and you get a good job, you can potentially be rich. I mean, with my degree, it probably not happen because I'm doing early childhood. But again, if you pick a really good job and you stick to it and you secure the job, then you could potentially live comfortably enough to feel like you're rich. And again, since we live in America, which is masculine culture, of course, you've seen that throughout history, and you've seen that, of course, now. But I don't love that we are solely ruled by men. I mean, I'm not saying that we've like in my family, like my dad doesn't make like all the decisions. Of course, we're a collective group, we all make decisions together. But of course, in the world, it's like, oh man, we have a male president, we have men in Congress, we have men everywhere. That's just the way that we run. Of course, I said here, I'm hoping to at least make it more equal, or at least change little things to where it's not as masculine. Again, as masculine as it is now, hoping to make it even. So I try every day to make it better. I have said it before in previous speeches, but I like consistency and knowing my schedule, and so does the majority of my family. I am a monochronic when it comes to time and dates. Usually we will sign up for classes. This is an example of this. We usually sign up for classes pretty early, and then I get the schedule in my head and stuff, and I'm like, okay, I know that this building on campus cuts through there, and I plan it in my head, so like I know where I'm going when I'm going, and I'm like, okay, I have to leave this specific time to get there just like 10 or 15 minutes early. So again, this is why I'm monochronic. The theory of intersectionality is knowing and understanding that you would not be you without your overall appearance and how you interact and go about being in society. So this was a definition that I wrote myself. That was for area 2, and I have an example of this, and it is that I have colored hair. I am a woman. I am white, and I'm American. All of these make me me. So, and this was, that was an example of intersectionality. That was the theory of intersectionality, and how if you take one thing away, then of course I wouldn't be me. And this is just like the appearance that everyone sees and what I see. It's a way that it's your identity, it's your self identity that the theory of intersectionality is. And in the textbook, interpersonal, and it's interpersonal, this is chapter 10. This is page 263, and this is the first section and second paragraph that explains, this is an example of the theory. And it's whenever Samantha felt out of place. She was going to an almost all male dominated college, and she felt, since she was a woman of color, she felt isolated and she didn't feel like she belonged with everyone else. So there were a couple of examples of that, of course, was isolation, and she felt different and out of place. I have felt out of place before too, in specific group settings. And a reason was like, sometimes I'm at my brother's like birthday party with friends, and I'm like, it's a bunch of boys, I don't fit here. I mean, I could make friends with really anyone if I try hard enough, but like this isn't my group. And an example of what was going on a little more in the situation. So of course, she was a woman of color, unlike all of her white males in her group. And one way that they could exclude her from her, or they were being mean to her, of course, they could start excluding her, of course. From conversations, they could start talking about her while she was in the room, and they just didn't care. And they could make decisions without her being there about the group. So this is just a couple forms of de-inclusion. So they pushed her away, and they didn't want her a part of the group. So this is gender differences, and how is this research helpful in improving your IPC? This can help how you communicate with different genders and how you can change your behaviors in a conversation that are best suited for the person you're having a conversation with. So I talk differently than I talk with like my brothers. Like with my brothers, I am a lot more chill because of course they're my family, but like I use different words, and my body language is of course different. But like when I'm talking with my friends, I'm like, oh my goodness, yes, I totally remember when she said that, and it was like insane. But again, you have to know who you're having a conversation with and how they are in a conversation, and you can change it accordingly. Because like I have a lot of like friends who are girls, so I'm a lot more with my hand movements and like with my facial expressions, and my brothers, I'm like, oh yeah, that was kind of cool. But it's a lot more different because of those gender differences. What are the limits to this research? This is showing the this is whenever they were talking about how men and women act differently in conversations. This is a little bit what I was talking about just a second ago. So I didn't like, whenever I was reading this research, they did talk about it a little farther down, but that wasn't the pages I was required to read. And I don't think I said the page number. I think it was on 263. I think it was on 263. It said, what are the limits to this research? So the limits that I saw, they said a little farther down, but they did not talk about people who don't fit into a male and female box. So I wish they would have involved, of course, non-binary people, or of course people who did not fit in either one, or they were both and they're not. So I wish they would have done that, and I wish there would have been a little bit more in depth. But I was happy to see that they actually did talk about texting and how we were over, like, how women are over phones, like we use more emotions, and so do guys. So I was happy to see that. That was just the only thing that I had with it, but I was really happy about that. So the other thing that I talked about was we should exercise some degree of caution, and we should exercise some degree in caution whenever we are trying to interpret things from other people. So some people that they may do gestures with their hands whenever they're super nervous or they're lying. So then you take that into consideration, and then sometimes you apply it to other people, and that's not what other people think or the way that they work. So sometimes you can misinterpret messages whenever you're thinking of someone else. You're like, oh, Sammy does that a lot, but it's not what the other person uses it for. So you have to be careful when, of course, interpreting how they are in conversations and their body language, and of course how your body language is and the way you interpret yourself. The other thing is that it could, of course, cause confusion. You could you shouldn't assume just because someone's a guy, you're like, well, he said this a lot, he did this a lot. So you shouldn't involve stereotypes when you are talking with someone. A friend always has a drink in their hand, they're always sloshing and they're being weird. So you shouldn't try to be like, oh, all guys are out like that. So you can ask them questions to make sure that their behavior is correct, and just try not to copy and paste other people's behaviors onto someone you just met or you have known. And you can always ask questions. Be like, hey, my friend does this. Are you the same way? Just to be sure. One of the things I did like about the study was whenever men and women are having conversations. I talked a little bit about that. I was happy to see the similarities between men and women. And I was happy to see that a couple of things that I do, since I am a woman, I was happy to see them on the list, because sometimes I feel like when I'm talking, I'm like, God, no one does that. So I was happy to see that a lot of the studies were similar to me, so it didn't make me feel as weird. So I felt like they did an excellent job. There were a lot of throughout this chapter, there were a lot of robust definitions and really important theories. So I was really happy to see that they were easy enough to explain, and of course, hopefully I'm explaining it well enough to you. So that's just how I felt. The ad, always hashtag like a girl. This ad made me feel numerous amount of things. The first I felt sad, because that's how I was brought up. If someone said, you run like a girl, and that's of course what the girls were doing, that's exactly what I would have done. And I was happy to see that whenever they involved the younger girls, they had a different mindset. So I'm happy to see that we've changed our mindset from being a girl is so negative, you're a baby, you can't do anything, to something that's actually positive and you can do things. So I was happy to see that. I was also happy to see that the older girls were the people were trying to explain to them, why do you think like that? They were like, well, that's just the way I was taught. And they were like, okay, but why were you taught that way? So I was happy to see that they were going through almost undoing their thinking. So I was really, again, was happy about that. And then they were like, actually, we're going to stop it here and now. I'm going to run like how I would run. I'm going to fight like how I would fight. And I'm going to be me, because I'm a girl and it's something I should be proud of. And then we have, how are we socialized to to be taught how to be a incidental gender. So whenever I think of this question, whenever we're like taught to be one gender or it's like pushed on us, I think of my grandmother. So I remember there would be times I would spend the night at their house or the weekend, and she's Catholic. Her thinking is a little old, and she's old and she insane, but she really pushed gender socialization on me. And I'm not mad at her. I love her, but it was definitely hard going over there because I felt like it was always a fight. So I was 6'8" at the time whenever this happened. We were going to church, and the rule was you have to wear a dress. As a young girl, I always liked I like girly things, so I was like, yeah, I'll wear a dress, okay. So anytime you put on a dress to go to church, you had to wear tights. I absolutely hated tights, or she called them pantyhose, but I absolutely hated them because to get them on, you have to pinch, you have to pull it up so it fits all right. She would pinch so hard getting these pantyhose up that it was a fight. Like, I remember actually crying one time because it was just absolutely horrible. And I was like, I hate wearing pantyhose. Why do I have to wear pantyhose? And she's like, well, honey, that's what women wear. And she was like, and you look like a lady. And she was trying to play it off like, look, I'm helping you grow up and be a woman, and I'm helping you and all that kind of stuff. And I hated it. I hated it so much. And I told her, I was like, if this is what a lady is, then I don't want to do it. She, of course, was very mad at me, but that's what I think of whenever I think of gender socialization, is whenever I'm being pushed to wear pantyhose. And I like to dress. It would have been fine if I just wore a dress. And I even asked, I was like, why don't you wear pantyhose? And she was like, well, I can't bend down and pull them up anymore. It's like, oh, but you can do that for me. So anyways, that's the gender socialization that I think of. What are some of the stereotypes we tend to reinforce about getting in IPC? So a couple stereotypes whenever I think of genders and interpersonal communication is that only thing girls talk about is shopping, makeup, and boys. And of course I do have a couple. Those are just a couple that I have listed. And then for the boys, it's like women, football, cars. It's all they talk about. And I know a couple people actually in my everyday life and my friends who think like this. I have a couple girlfriends. It's all they think about is boys, shopping, and of course makeup. That's the only 3 things that they think of. That's constantly on their brain. Each time I think of them, they're like, I got this new makeup, or there's this guy that I've been thinking about. And then I don't really know that many boys who like all 3 of these things, because it's usually one or the 2. So whenever I meet someone new, of course, you have to push those stereotypes aside, and you have to actually learn and know the person you're talking to. So you can ask questions like, oh, do you like football? Or do you like makeup? And just to be sure that you are correct in your thinking before you make an assumption or you push these stereotypes on them. But again, you can always ask questions. It's okay to ask questions and just try to understand what the person was telling you and what you interpreted in the conversation. What can we do to promote less restrictive and limiting views on our relational partners in terms of gender? So, as I said just before, is not pushing our beliefs on someone. So, one of my beliefs is that that I had to break was that all girls, of course, the stereotype, especially when I was younger, all girls like makeup, all girls like dresses, all girls like this, and it's really, really girly things that are made for girls. And again, you can ask questions about them, oh, what am I, if you want to be nice about it, you can be like, one of my friends likes that. I just didn't know if you did because I wasn't sure and I didn't want to make an assumption. You can always say that. Even with guys, you can be like, I didn't know that you like cars. My friend actually does, but I wasn't sure. So I was just making sure that I was right in my thinking. But again, on page 275, this was another example of gender socialization, is that so you can actually be pushed on this. So a family member or a parent. So again, with me, it was my grandmother who pushed this type of thinking on me. And of course, I don't think like that now, thank God. But you can be steered in one gender direction. Like, we're born female, so you have to like dresses. You were born male, so you have to like cars. So you can only fit in these two boxes. Like, there's like a set amount of things in a box. So it's like girls like makeup, girls like dresses, girls like pink, girls like, you know, Barbie, all that kind of stuff. Boys like cars, boys like football, boys like tools. So it's like there are only two boxes that you can go to, so you're being steered in one direction or the other, and you can't really have both. Of course, now we have different ways of thinking, so it's not as like you got to pick a box. But yes, you can always ask questions just to be sure. Like, I didn't know if you like that, and I didn't want to make an assumption. So always ask just to be sure, so you don't make an assumption or you make them fit in the stereotype. So I actually took a quiz. This was building your IPC skills. I learned that I'm very respectful of different cultures. I'm always willing to learn more. Like, teach me about your culture. Oh, you eat this type of food. That's really interesting. You worship this. You do this. You wear a specific type of clothing. This is a really interesting holiday. I'm always open to learn new cultures because I wasn't only, but like I only know my culture. But I'm always open to learn more. Like, oh, you go to this church. You have to do this and you do that. And I was really happy to see that, like, I was really good at, like, asking questions and stuff. The only thing that I didn't like about this test was my low score in interaction enjoyment. I'm pretty sure I had just had a long day at work whenever I took this quiz, and I'm pretty sure the quiz was correct in having me a low score, but I think it was because the people who I've been talking to at work, and it was clouding my judgment. So I'm hoping that more than a couple days later, I can retake the test and I can get a higher score. And I do plan on working on it. Like, I ask questions throughout conversations, like, oh my goodness, you do that. That's really great. And I feel like I enjoy conversations, and I thought it was weird that the quiz gave me such a low score, but I'm pretty sure it was because my work was like in my head, like it was just like, oh my god, I gotta deal with that. Oh my goodness, I don't want to talk to anyone. God, I don't care about what you say. So I'm pretty sure that's why it was such a low score, but again, I'm planning on fixing it. So I watched 2 TED Talks about gender and gender differences. I watched Paula Stone Williams, and I watched Sam Killerman's TED Talk. I was able to see with Paula's TED Talk, and I was able to see with Paula's TED Talk side by side because she was originally a man and then she transitioned into being a woman. That a lot of things are different. Since I am a woman, I only know one side of it. And of course, my parents and other people have explained the difference between men and women and all that kind of stuff. But it was really interesting to hear her almost comedic way of like explaining it. So one of the things I did say was that they do have a few similarities. But she did say that women aren't believed. Since she's transitioned, she isn't believed as much. She had a story about she was going to bring her car in because she said something was wrong with it, and she said exactly what was wrong with it. And the guy was like, no, it's this and this. And she's like, no, I'm telling you what's wrong with it, and you're not listening to me. And he's like, no, there's no way that can be. So like she had to almost argue with this person. And then finally someone else came out and was like, oh yeah, it's your back wheels. It's like your back axle. That's the issue with it. And she was like, oh, thank you. So she was just happy, which is absolutely horrible because I've dealt with that too, where people are just like, no, you're wrong. You're a woman. You don't know what you're talking about. Women don't know anything about cars. But that was one of the things that she said. She was like, what the heck is wrong with y'all? We're a human. We have brains. I have this thing up here that works. Just saying. But anyway, she did a really good job. And she did say that she did bring, since she was a man the majority of her life, she did bring a lot of her male privilege over. So whenever that's like people, of course, you're like woman, which she's not mad at, but it's just the way that they think and the way that they're like, you don't know what you're talking about. You're insane. You're just a woman. You don't know anything. That was one of the things that really hurt her. But a little more about her story was that her father, it took her father a long time because she came from a conservative family. Her father was like, I don't know really what this is about, but I'm just saying I love you no matter what. So that one really touched my heart. So I was really happy about that. I actually almost cried. But anyway, but she did say that she did like being a woman. She likes being a woman and all that kind of stuff because she finally feels like right in her skin. But it was definitely hard seeing those vast gender differences that men and women have. And then Sam did an excellent job about explaining gender identity. So he said, like, there are 3 things that, like, really simple. They were really simple. And I'm pretty sure there are a lot more, like, vast things now, but he made it very bite-sized and digestible to understand. So he said, so what you think in your mind, so this is what you think, like, am I a boy, am I a girl, am I in between? So what you think in your mind, how you express yourself, so you could either, like, the way you cut your hair, the way you dress, the way that you talk, and the way that you act. So just a couple ways, or art, the way you express yourself, and the way you feel inside, and the way you feel out. And then your biological sex. So, of course, you were born a woman, you were born a man. So those were just the 3 that he said right off the bat. So I was really happy to see him break them down pretty simple. And he, of course, was also decently comedic, trying to keep it light and airy, but still he had a lot of real terms. And I was very happy to see that he knew what he was talking about. Of course, both these people were very insightful, and they were amazing speakers, and I was happy to listen to them forever. I don't even remember how long the video was, but it felt quick. It went by real fast, so I was really happy to see that they did an amazing job. Americans' communication sometimes doesn't go well in other countries. So I did also watch this video. I knew the majority of these because there was a school, my brother was into a kick for a while back for his school, I forgot what it was. But he would come back and he would be like, did you know about this fact? Did you know about this fact? Did you see about that? And I was like, oh, okay, hello. So I did remember a couple of these. I just didn't remember which country that they went to. But after hearing it, I was like, oh my goodness, yeah, Dane talked about that, or Troy talked about that. The only 2 things I didn't know about was the food. So I always, food is a big part of human life and, of course, other countries. So I didn't know that if you cleaned your food, I don't remember which country it was in, I forgot to write it down, I'm sorry, but if you cleaned your plate, that meant that you weren't satisfied with the meal. That meant the person didn't give you enough food, you weren't satisfied enough. So even if you were full and you completely finished your plate, they were like, oh, okay, you don't like our food here. That's really mean. Or if you did leave food on your plate, then you were satisfied. Like, oh yes, I have enough room to put it away, so I just left some of it here. Which I do kind of understand. I understand both sides of it. But of course, since we live in America, it's like, you cleaned your plate. Oh my goodness, you must be so full. Goodness, it's amazing. And there are, of course, Mexican and Spanish communities where it's that are like that. Resisting food, saying oh, no, thank you, I'm full, I don't need any food, that's also considered rude. Of course, that is how some Latino and, of course, other families, and especially Houston is a vast type of cultures, and I did kind of remember someone saying that, and I just didn't remember which culture or where it was from. But overall, of course, I knew the majority of the other ones, but I was happy to see that there were 2 that I didn't know. So, of course, you always learn new things. Different thoughts and ideas about heritage, and this was from the Mixed Dish video. So, culture is learned by what your parents and family or community has kept alive and taught you that is what their customs are. So, one of our customs is, since we are Christian, we do Christmas. We do Christmas every year. So, those are one of our customs that we have. And then, and a little more of what I said is knowing your culture can give you a sense of self. So of course we're Christian, so we have Christmas, so it feels like, oh, we're connecting with Jesus. It gives you that's kind of a part of your identity. And the other thing was that you can, whenever you learn from other cultures, it gives you a better understanding of the world and like how like different cultures work. So it's like how Muslim or Arabic or Japanese cultures. It doesn't have to be just religion, but it can be other like countries, how they work. And it really is interesting whenever you really get down to it and learn and just have someone else like tell you about it. You're like, oh my goodness, that's really cool. I can't believe we didn't think of that. That would be really great. That seems really, that's amazing. So I am always trying to, I'm a pretty open-minded person, so I always like when people are like, we had, or like Jewish communities, like we have, of course, the, you know, the I'm blanking on the holiday right now that they have in the month of December, but those are just, I always think that's so cool. I've always been fascinated with Jewish culture and the way that they celebrate and religion and all that kind of stuff. It's always been fascinating to me. But I was also happy to see in this video both sides of culture and letting the young girl kind of take like her pick. Okay, again, it was between her and her her mother, and her mother's sister, and they were saying like, these are our dishes. So they both had different ideas of what their of course their culture was like. So her mother had like traditional like African like food, so it had like a specific type of meat, a specific side of like, I think it was like potatoes, I could be wrong, but it was like really like raw like food. And then her sister had like it looked like macaroni. It looked very basic to like American cuisine and stuff like that. And then she was like, this is what her mom was like, this is what our motherland, this is what it says, like, and she like, this is what they ate. And her sister was like, no, this is what we ate. And she brought over like what people would whenever that was during like slave days, like what they would just take scraps and they would make food out of it because that's all they were given. So it was interesting to see both their sides. And her mother did end up giving up halfway through because of what her sister said to her, but she was able to kind of pick, but it was mostly because of her sister said that, the mom's sister said that, so she picked the sister's food because she was just left and she was willing to talk to her. So this is my last one. This is Josie's story, being transgender. So I was really happy to see Josie's story. I don't even know this girl, and I felt like I connected with her immediately. This video shows the good, the bad, the ugly that someone with transgender and some transgender people go through. So there were a couple things that were a little, the way that they thought and the way that, of course, the video is 10 years old. So it is a little dated, but overall the idea and the message is still there. So I was really happy to see that. When they were trying to make their, make her, like, help her how she felt and how, I was really happy to see that her mother was like, I support you no matter what. We will get you, not help, but we will support you no matter what. We will help you with your journey. We will do anything we can to help you. So I was really happy to see that. And she was just like, my kid doesn't feel comfortable in her skin, so I have to go like find people who can make her comfortable in her skin. And some parents are like, no, this is bad. We're gonna, you know, the devil's in you and all that kind of stuff. So I was really happy to see that her mother was like, no, this is completely natural. I've looked it up. I've done all these things, but it's real. So I was really happy to see that. And the one thing that I wish they would have changed that I had a question on was they mentioned her sister, her adoptive sister, and how like her sister was wearing dresses. And so Josie was like, I want to wear a dress too. So I was really hoping to see her sister a little bit more in the documentary, but I understand that it wasn't her story and she probably wanted to keep her privacy. But anyway, again, that story connected with me and I was really happy to see it. The one part that was really sad to me was whenever Josie was in the bathroom and she had nail clippers and she was physically going to hurt herself. And that happens with transgender people because they're trying to fix their body any way that they can to make it feel like theirs. But again, overall, this was a really powerful story, and I was really happy to watch it and and of course I kind of already understood it, but I was happy to like see her point of view, and like they had an interview with her so you could hear her point of view, her thoughts, her takes, all that kind of stuff. But anyways, thank you so much. My name is Assessment-Lege. This is for my interpersonal communications course 1318.